Yo, what is going on today, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Mages. Everybody's favorite topic nowadays. Mages in solo lane, mages in support, mages in mid. They're becoming a little bit of a problem. When we're talking about mages, I think the best place to start is with the SPL. And this Reddit post kind of does a pretty good intro into the beginning of it. And the part I want to focus on is the first thing that I want to mention is the fact that Mage Solo being this strong is a rather recent change in the meta. So the post about how high-res hates warriors fails to mention this. And this is the play rate in solo lane of each of these classes. In 10-10, it was dominated by warriors, almost 3 times as much. A little bit of a fall off for warriors, a little bit of a rise for mages, brought it to about a 2-1. And then week 5, mages become stronger, warriors become worse. And then week 6, mages become a lot stronger. Warriors get a little bit stronger, I guess, also. But it doesn't seem to be a massive problem outside of a few mages. And Zapman, a professional ADC for the Highland Ravens, says, I would argue that the only reason a broad range of mages in solo can exist in the first place is because of mage hybrid items. Mage hybrid items referring to items that have power, health, and then kind of breastplate also added in their protections. It's more of not having hybrid items. It's this hybrid build that has so many things together. Vampiric Shroud has HP and magic power. Pythax has HP, power, lifesteal, and CDR. Breastplate is OP in combination, makes mages unstoppable. Basically stating these 3 items kind of give them everything that they need. And Final K responded with, none of those items give prots and power, though they're not really hybrid. Fizz characters have items that give health, power, and sustain all year, just like mages, and those items have sucked mostly. So Zapman's trying to argue it's specific items to mages that make mages so strong. Final K saying on the opposite side, it's less so that mage items are strong, it's more so warrior items are weak. And after the last week of SPL, Hi-Rez opts to nerf a lot of these mage items that are built in this build path. And it's the same build path. And that, I think, comes down to a little bit of the boringness and the not exciting meta that we've been drawn into. It's the same items being built. Vamp, Pythags, Breastplate, Genjis, Typhons, every game. And with the mages nerfs coming in, some hype from some of the solo laners, namely Solo or Troll. Excited about the potential mage meta being over. And then this comes out, the day of PTS dropping, and it seems like it is not all good on the SPL front with these Mage Solos. Benny tweets out another patch of Mage Solos. But before that, let's take a look at the patch and what led to these mages staying in the same spot where they're actually viable and maybe not even just viable, maybe still dominating the meta. Because the nerfs that Hi-Rez gave were very heavy-handed. Crimson Totem is down 3% lifesteal. Typhon's Fang is down 5 power, and the conversion rate is down 50%, or I guess it's about 25%. Vamp Shroud got nuked, 5 power down, 2% lifesteal, health restored down 1, mana restored down 2. Blood Soak Shroud lost 10 power, and the health and mana sustain in the late game is also dropped by a significant portion. Enchanted Trinket, which is Pythags tier 2, loses 2% lifesteal and 5 power. Pythags loses 2% lifesteal, 5 power, 5 power on passive, and 2% lifesteal on passive. Magical lifesteal. Breastplate loses 5 protections and loses 5 MP5. And then on top of that, buffs across the board for warriors. All the shields get health, lose cost. Pesty gets HP 5, loses cost. Archdruids gains protections. Dawnbringer gets HP 5. Warrior's Axe gets power. A bunch of these on top. And this still wasn't enough for mages. Final K is kind enough to tweet out what he thinks the build is going to be looking like after this patch and why it's still going to be fine. And looking at it, it changes up a little bit. We can take a look at the previous build. This is what it looks like. You get 40% cooldown nearly instantly. You get a lot of power, a lot of sustain, some flat pen, and you're very tanky along with it from Breastplate and Genji's combo. And really, there's not much that's changed. They're just slotting in slightly different items in some spots. Conduit into Soul Gem is slightly more clear, a little bit more PvP, but less sustain, less survivability. Breastplate Genji's, Breastplate's nerf wasn't enough. It's still going to be fine. Genji's didn't get nerfed. It's still going to be bought. Typhon's Fang, yes, it got nerfed, but it is still just very cost efficient with what it does. It gives you threat onto frontliners, also with that 20% pen on top of lifesteal, on top of power. And then Gem of Focus switches out sustain survivability for movement speed survivability and extra damage. And then on top of that, either Reaver or Divine, whatever that last item is. This item is always kind of an open slot. Sometimes you saw Divine just to be able to anti-heal the enemy solo laner because there was so much healing in the game. Showing Reaver, there's a possibility it's Reaver because there's not as much sustain also in that solo lane. So you're opting for something that just does a little bit more damage than does a little bit more sustain. But that's kind of where we're at now. We're at this meta where mages will most likely be dominating worlds, mages in solo lane. Yes, I don't think it really extends beyond a lot of those top tiers. On top of it, Opwash got nerfed, Raijin got nerfed, Poseidon got nerfed. There is other mages that can be played. We've seen Agni a little bit. We've seen Hera a little bit. We've seen Ishel a little bit. There is gods that can still be played. And I guess that brings me around to the problem in all of this. And it's warriors. And I think beyond just warriors, I think it really does look at what these class passives added. I was never a big fan of class passives. There's no way these broad general stats can just make all these classes balanced. Assassins getting flat pen. Well, now if assassins are played in solo lane and they're built tanky, they're just going to be doing a good amount of extra damage because they have this flat pen. Warriors get 10% CDR, which is good from like level 1 to 5. But then as soon as you're hitting level 5, usually you have 20% cooldown in your kit. You've got blue buff augment. You've also got the cooldown buff on that side of the map. So that this 10% cooldown is near irrelevant. And that's not on even talking about cooldown in the game. There are so many cooldown items that you can build and that are actually very good to build. Genji, Shoguns, Magi's, Breastplate of Regrowth, Breastplate of Valor, Soul Leader, Cloak, Glad Shield, Cad Shield, Spirit's Robe, Sekhmets, Pridwin. All these items, Mantle, all these items are items that are not incredibly common in solo lane, but they can be built a lot. Guardians getting CCR. Well, it doesn't really change too much. You think about CCR and what it adds. Yes, it adds a little bit of survivability, but comparing it to this mage passive of free power, getting 20 bonus power at level 1, and actually it could be 22 power at level 1, scaling all the way up to 60 power at level 20. Yes, it's not like a ton early game, but if you look at the level 1 start for mages, just currently, Vamp Shroud gives 30 power, Tier 1 Pythags gives 25 power, and then you get a free 20 power, and it's actually 22 power. Mages are going into lane with 75 power. Comparing it to a current warrior build, warriors are going into lane with 15 power and 54 magical protections, but on top of that, mages also have that sustain. They have that survivability. Sustain isn't really there for warriors. It's 15 HP 5. And then lastly, hunters also have a really good class passive where they're just getting extra auto attack damage late game on top of just being scaling gods. So they're just going to scale even harder into the late game along with these mages who through the entire game are just going to be stronger outright. And that's why I think this class passive, in theory, it was a good idea, because if you think back to why these class passives were added or when they were added when mages were getting pushed out of mid lane and it was hunters in mid lane a lot. And this was supposed to help mages kind of get that little extra power to be able to clear in the early game. But now it's kind of coming back around and it's looking like a negative. And that's why I think these band-aid fixes that high-res sometimes come up with are fine in the moment, but a lot of times they come back around to bite you. I think this Invader's Curse is another one that needs to be removed. I think it is not adding into Smite positively anymore. The out-of-combat anti-heal reduction that it used to be in the game that was also just removed, that was a good change. Removing that was a good change. It would push Smite into a positive direction, in my opinion. And I think this is now the point where Season 11... nothing else can be done Season 10, but we look forward to Season 11. Class passives need to be removed, need to be maybe just outright changed to be just a lot weaker, where 10% cooldown is fine. Mages maybe get 5 power early game, scales up to 25 late game. Hunters get 5 auto attack damage late game. Because if you look at it, these class passives are not balanced. And I think that's the big problem. But that's the video. That's the outlook. That's the sad reality of what we're probably going to see at Worlds. Fingers crossed we don't. I'm really hoping that somebody tries out some of these warrior things, because I really don't think warriors are that bad. I think they are playable, but do they or are they worth as much as these mage solos? Time will tell. We'll see at Worlds. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys have a lot of fresh today. I'll see you guys again next time. Peace.